Hello friends, Steve Stockton here with you. Welcome to our latest video. In this episode, we'll be looking into some cases of couples who mysteriously vanished together. So come with me. Let's walk and see. First up, we have Camden Sylvia and Michael Sullivan. On the evening of November 7th, 1997, 36-year-old Camden Sylvia and her boyfriend Michael Sullivan, 56, left the Manhattan loft they shared together to go for a nice quiet jog. The couple were artists and lived in a rent-controlled building, getting their loft at a steal for only $300 a month. Try to find that in Manhattan. They were, by all accounts, a very kind and loving and happy couple. They had a routine of going out for a nightly jog together, and the night of November 7th, 1997 was no different. Later on, video surveillance would show the two of them visiting a nearby video store together, renting a movie. However, this footage would be the last time anyone ever saw or heard from the pair, as it seems as though once they left the video store, they walked right off the face of the earth. It wasn't until several days later that people started to realize that no one had heard from either one of them, and even neighbors thought it strange that they weren't seen coming or going at any of their usual times. Camden's mother visited the loft in order to see what was going on, and she found that, aside from the couple's pairs of jogging shoes and Camden's tote bags with one set of keys to the home, all of their personal possessions and worldly belongings were left behind and seemingly untouched. It didn't look like anything was amiss, and there were no signs of struggle at all in the small loft. It actually looked like one or both of them would be coming right back through the door at any moment. Their bank accounts and credit card records were searched right away, but they hadn't been touched. There didn't seem to be a single clue or shred of evidence to give any idea as to what could have possibly happened to the pair. Once the investigation started, though, upon speaking with the other tenants in the building where the couple lived, the investigators came across some rather disturbing information about the landlord, a man named Robert Rodriguez. Robert was rather hated by the tenants and was accused of randomly and without any notice, and also illegally, as it was a rent-controlled building, trying to raise the rent of all the tenants in the building by what was described in several sources as an exorbitant amount. He also threatened that if anyone refused to pay this new increased rent, he would simply turn off the heat in the building. This was a rather significant threat due to the fact that this was New York City in the wintertime, and it was bitterly cold outside. The tenants in the building told Robert that they would withhold all rent should he carry out this threat about the heat, and on the day of their disappearance, Michael personally handed him a petition signed by everyone in the building about a rent strike if the rent was raised. Michael is said to have been the one to initiate the petition as well. Initially, it's said that Mr. Rodriguez was extremely cooperative with investigators. He even invited them to search the entire complex without complaint and offered anything else they might need from him as well. He denied having anything to do with the disappearance, and nothing of value was found during the initial search. However, this seeming cooperation wouldn't last very long, as shortly after the investigation started, he himself was reported missing, and the police were unable to find him. His family refused the police access to his property in Orange County, New York, upstate from where the loft the missing couple lived in. Police had a kind of way around this refusal, though, as they didn't have enough for a warrant, but they went ahead and flew helicopters over the entire home and property and used infrared cameras to look for any bodies. However, nothing was found there either. Meanwhile, the investigators tore up the entire floor of the loft as well, looking for any evidence at all to either connect Robert to the crime or to find out if just anything nefarious in general had happened there, but this was to no avail. Nothing was found, and the police and the victims' families were at a loss. What could have happened to these two perfectly normal people who went out to do a perfectly normal thing on a seemingly perfectly normal night in New York City? They didn't simply evaporate, did they? Cadaver dogs in the elevator picked up no scent either. As all this went on, the police couldn't shake the suspicion that Robert Rodriguez definitely was hiding something, and thought he most likely did have something to do with the couple's disappearance. However, they could find no evidence or proof. The prevailing theory was that the disputes over the raising of the rents and the heat issue had perhaps gone too far when Michael handed him the petition. It's posited that Robert flew into a rage and made them disappear. Robert remained missing throughout all these searches, and all the while, wild conjecture and rumor flew around his name and his family. The police even went as far as sending divers into a nearby lake to search for the bodies of the missing couple, but, as with every other attempt at finding Camden and Michael, nothing was found and nothing more had ever come of it. Making this disappearance and the suspicion on Robert Rodriguez even more sinister was the fact that he was a suspect in yet another disappearance. A man named David King was an associate of and a co-defendant in a lawsuit of $13 million against Robert Rodriguez back in 1991. Not long after they had a heated argument, David King simply vanished without a trace. Though suspicion was always on Mr. Rodriguez, as with the case of Camden and Michael, there was never any evidence found against him. He was never formally charged in any of these disappearance cases. He reemerged 2 weeks after initially going missing during the investigation, but he did so with a lawyer in tow and no longer wishing to cooperate at all with the police or speak to the press. He was eventually arrested on completely unrelated charges, which included tax evasion, credit card fraud, and money laundering. He was also later charged with identity theft and sentenced to 6 years in prison. He was released, though, in 2004, and to this day there's no evidence against him in either disappearance, and no credible leads or even any evidence has ever been found to implicate Robert Rodriguez or anyone else in the disappearance of Camden Sylvia and Michael Sullivan. Next up, we have Christopher Mittendorf and Christina Branham. On July 27, 2006, 21-year-old Hardin County, Tennessee resident Christopher Mittendorf left his home to go shopping with his 17-year-old fiancée, Christina Branham. Neither of the two were ever seen or heard from again. The couple lived with Christopher's mother at the time of their disappearance, and she is the one who reported them missing. Later on that same day, when she returned home, she noticed that her son and Christina had purchased some new clothing, which she saw laid out on their bed. She couldn't find the two of them anywhere and alerted the authorities. From the beginning, there wasn't much to go on, and in this case, it wasn't until 5 days later that their car was found, apparently abandoned, on the side of the road approximately 50 to 60 miles away in a very rural area. While only one of their cell phones was left behind in the vehicle, the other phone was going straight to voicemail and had been since the time they were thought to have disappeared. A witness came forward and claimed she saw the couple climbing into a white car and drove off with whoever was in it. They did not seem, at least according to this witness, to be under any type of stress or duress. There were no clues or leads aside from this one, though, and the case very quickly went cold. As she went through her son's belongings trying to find anything that might explain his disappearance, Christopher's mother found a lockbox in his room that contained items belonging to an alleged career criminal named George Bogus. Christopher's mother wondered if her son and his fiancée possibly stole the items belonging to Mr. Bogus and unwittingly made themselves a target of this allegedly very dangerous man. Before the police could launch any kind of real investigation into this theory, George Bogus' wife murdered him. This happened in 2010, and then there was no chance of ever really knowing what happened to the young couple. The pair remain missing to this day, and the case is completely cold. Next, we have Claude and Martha Sue Shelton. On May 21st, 1971, 27-year-old stay-at-home mom and homemaker Martha Sue Shelton, called Sue by those who were closest to her, and her husband, a 37-year-old man named Claude, whom it's only said in the report that had 10-plus years employment at his job, whatever his job was, tucked their 3 children into bed and told them they would be going to meet up with some friends to go and get a late bite to eat at a nearby truck stop. The couple left their home at Jerry's Trailer Park, which was located on 18th Street in Corbin, Kentucky, at around 2 in the morning, and headed to King's Truck Stop to meet their friends. The truck stop was only 5 miles from their home, so it shouldn't have taken them very long to drive there and back, and they shouldn't have been gone long at all, as they were only planning on having a quick bite to eat. Despite this, however, they were never seen or heard from again. Their daughter, Sheila, said she remembers her father asking her mother if she wanted to come with him or wait at home, and that her mother had agreed to go. Now, the first odd thing that comes up in this case is the fact that, according to Sheila, Her parents first took all the money they had stored in a jar in the house, totaling about $600 before they left. Now, to me, that's a huge sum of money to bring with you if you're only grabbing something to eat at a small town truck stop. They drove a white 1967 Ford Galaxy, and the owner of the truck stop, who was familiar with the Sheltons and their children, said he never saw either Sue or Claude, and he also never saw their vehicle there that night. Everyone close to them agreed that they would never abandon their children, and for this simple fact, something horrible had to have happened to them. In actuality, almost everyone interviewed who was close to the couple said the trip in general was extremely odd and out of character, as it was very much unlike Claude and Sue to leave their children unattended at all. The truck stop, the area surrounding their home, and some nearby woods were all searched thoroughly, but no sign of the couple ever turned up. There's no more relevant information on this case, and Claude and Sue Shelton remain missing, and the case is still cold to this day. And now we have Danielle, Imbo, and Richard Patrone. At the beginning of 2005, Danielle Imbo was a 34-year-old single mother of an 18-month-old son who was going through a divorce when her best friend from high school, Christine, reintroduced her to Christine's brother, an old high school crush of Danielle's, named Richard Patrone. The two hit it off immediately, but it seems as soon as they did and things were starting to look up for the couple, Danielle's ex-husband and father of her son suddenly started reaching out and trying to rekindle their relationship. Danielle was understandably confused, as on the one hand she was thinking about keeping her family together for her son, and on the other hand she remembered they were divorcing for a reason. Finally, stressed out and unsure of what to do, unable really to make a decision, Danielle told both men she needed space and time to herself. She decided she would be best off just focusing on being the best mother she could and working and raising her son. 5 weeks later, on February 19, 2005, Richard called Danielle and asked if she wanted to come out for a drink with him, just as friends. There were some bands performing locally that he knew she liked and thought she would appreciate hearing them play live. Danielle was in need of a night out, and so she agreed and met up with Richard and his friends Anthony and Michelle on South Street in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. With Danielle and Richard both supposed to be picking up their kids the next morning and not wanting to be too tired, they mutually decided to call it an early night after the bands were done playing. At approximately 11:45 p.m. that evening, they said goodbye to Anthony and Michelle and walked out of the bar. Not only were they never seen or heard from again, but Richard's vehicle, a 2001 black Dodge Dakota, was also never found. The Philadelphia and New Jersey police and the FBI have spent the last 17 years in search of even a single clue as to what could have happened to the young friends and the lost vehicle. Everyone involved wondered how not only could two people seemingly just disappear the way these two seemingly did, but how did a 3,000-pound vehicle simply dissolve as well? It just didn't make any sense. It was suggested as a possibility that they had some sort of accident and went off the road and into the Delaware River. Despite multiple vehicles being found in the river during the search, none of them belonged to Richard Patrone. Those closest to them said that neither would give up their children and just abandon them like this unless something terrible happened to them. Their cell phones have been off since the time of their disappearance, and neither one's bank account or credit cards have been touched. Authorities did receive a lead involving Danielle's estranged husband, who it is said exchanged threats with Richard over the phone multiple times while he and Danielle were dating for that brief period. Nothing ever came of their investigation into him. However, there has been a lot of tension between Danielle and Richard's respective families, as it confused many as to why Danielle had told Richard she didn't want to be with him anymore, and yet still agreed to meet him for drinks and to listen to music just 5 weeks later, even if it was just as friends. There's no evidence to suspect either foul play or fault on anyone's part. Danielle and Richard's disappearance remains an open case to this day. Anyone with any information is urged to please contact the Citizen Crime Commission's tip line at 215-546-TIPS or 8477. Callers do not have to give their name, and there is a $50,000 reward for information that leads to finding Danielle and Richard or the arrest of those person or persons responsible for their disappearance. Now up, we have Mitchell Weiser and Bonita Bickwood. On July 27, 1973, 16-year-old Mitchell Weiser and his 15-year-old girlfriend Bonita, whom he had met at her workplace in Narrowsburg, New York, planned to hitchhike to a concert and festival in Watkins Glen, a town 75 miles away. They were given their first short ride by a trucker and were last seen together hitchhiking on State Route 97. After this, though, their fate is unknown, and nobody's even sure if they ever made it to the concert. Initially, the authorities in charge of the case thought it most likely that the young couple had simply decided to run off together, but their families vehemently deny that they would ever do such a thing. A witness named Alan Smith came forward in the year 2000 with some information that took the case on a very interesting turn. Alan claimed that after that same concert, he hitched a ride on a Volkswagen bus and had met and spoken with two teenagers he was pretty sure were Mitchell and Bonita. He claimed that the bus had stopped and everyone got out to go swimming in some river, but that Bonita had gotten into some trouble in the water. And after Mitchell dove in to save her, they were both swept away, and everyone else on the bus just took off and went on with their lives as if nothing had happened. The driver of the bus did say that he would call the authorities on the very next stop, but there's no record of any call ever being made in regards to this somewhat bizarre case. While authorities don't technically completely discount what Alan Smith had to say, they do find it unsettling that he waited 26 years to come forward, and that allegedly nobody had made any attempt to help the couple at all. Alan, who obviously, at least according to his alleged story, seems to have seen the entire thing go down. Regardless of what the authorities or anyone else believes, just in general about Alan Smith's very delayed alleged confession, there's no evidence to back up what he said, and therefore the case is still unsolved to this day. No evidence has ever been found as to what could have possibly happened to this young couple, and it's as though they simply were here one minute and gone the next, with no reasonable or rational explanation, or really any explanation at all, as to what could have possibly happened to them, other than the story that Alan Smith told. Did they indeed make it to the concert, perhaps, and run into trouble there? Were they hitching their way home when they ran into some issue or possibly foul play? Or did they possibly go missing before even reaching their destination? Without any way to verify Alan Smith's 26-year-old story, it's all just a bunch of unknowns at this point. And the family hopes and prays that someday they will have the closure they so rightly deserve. Lastly, Sheila and Connor Dwyer. Our final case is considered to be one of Ireland's most baffling missing persons cases in the entire history of their country to date. On April 30th, 1991, an elderly married couple named Sheila and Connor Dwyer attended Mass at St. Patrick's Church in the town of Fermoy and seemingly vanished from the face of the earth right after. On May 18th, after not hearing from them for weeks, Sheila's sister went to the couple's home to see that everything was all right. It was quite uncommon for her sister to have gone this long without reaching out to her or anyone else in the family for that matter, and when nobody answered the door at the residence, she went ahead and notified the authorities. The police showed up soon after and broke the door down. However, there was no sign of the couple. There was no sign of forced entry or struggle or robbery in the home, and all that was missing was the couple and their car, a Toyota Cressida. The couple's clothing and glasses were still there, as well as a large amount of cash that was stashed in a tin. The house was very secure, which is why the authorities had to break down the door in the first place. It honestly appeared on all fronts as if the couple were simply planning on attending Mass and returning straight home. Strangely enough, it wasn't long before investigators discovered that this wasn't the first time one of the Dwyers had up and vanished without a trace. Turns out that sometime in the 1980s, Connor had gone missing for a couple of years, and upon his return provided no information at all as to where he'd been and what he'd been doing. He also never told anyone why he'd gone for so long without contacting everyone. It seems this was a mystery everyone who knew him had just accepted as something Connor did and moved on from it. Now, 30 years later, and neither Connor nor Sheila have ever returned, no one ever heard from them again, and there are no clues or evidence whatsoever to even point investigators in a direction as to what could have happened to them or where they could have ended up. To this very day, this is one of Ireland's most baffling, frustrating, and enduring unsolved disappearances. Well, folks, there you have it. What do you think of these strange couple disappearances? I look forward to your comments, but please keep it friendly and respectful. Till we meet again, be good to yourselves and each other. Stay safe out there. As for me, I'll see you a little farther on down the trail. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'll talk to you next time.